Great Divide is the 11th episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the greatest show of all time, at least in my opinion, hopefully yours too, and it is widely considered as one of, if not the worst episode of the entire show. But do you know why it is that bad, or are you just sheep following the herd? An NPC? That is why this week I will explain why The Great Divide sucks. First, don't forget to like and subscribe to this video, it really helps the channel out. Comment down below which episode I should do a breakdown on next. And without further ado, let's get right into it. The opening of this episode is a classic season 1 opening. The gang is camping, hanging out, and then transitions into the main themes. And here, it's about conflict resolution. We see the siblings fighting, and it feels pretty natural. If I was out with my sister for weeks to months on the road camping, I would be so mad at her sometimes. So this feels so natural, and I love to see, just in general, the gang scenes that they're not on the mission, they're just hanging out, being themselves, and we see their character here, we see them evolve a little bit in our eyes. I do have one question though, and that is, how does Aang know Appa has 5 stomachs? Like, that means an air nomad had to dissect a sky bison, and that just feels wrong. From their philosophy, it just feels wrong, and as them like protecting life on all levels, and here they are, like, I know they're already dead, but it just feels wrong to dissect a sky bison. So a little question on how they know, but that's just a nitpick. If we move on to the actual centerpiece of this episode, which are the tribes, they are very on the nose, and their connection with the siblings are so obvious. The everything's opposite thing is just on purpose, which makes it even more obvious. The clean and dirty versus old and sick, etc. So everything has to be this juxtaposition instead of just doing them more naturally, and we have something in common and something's not in common. But the siblings just super aligned perfectly, which each tribe just makes it way too on the nose in so many ways. They get into their roles also so quickly, and then just leave it so quickly after they have one single discussion about it, and they're fine all of a sudden. So it just feels like they don't get into it enough, and then they get into it way too much, and then it's way too over, and it's not horrible, it's just so basic. And I go to Avatar for some great writing, not some just average TV series writing. Also, the story is so stupid, how stealing the ball and everything, that it's kind of the point that it's so horrible, especially when Aang retells it. It just feels so stupid, and no one would be this upset about something I feel like done 100 or 200 years ago. It feels a little too much, honestly. But when we talk about stupid things, there's a ton of this in this episode, and that's just with consistency and logic, and that's so needed in an episode, especially a fantasy episode like this one, because otherwise it really hinders suspension of belief and you get pulled out of the story if everything isn't consistent and logic, especially with your magic system. The food thing, that they had to eat or throw away every food before going in, makes sense on the surface, but if you think about it for more than 2 seconds, like, they wouldn't have any food after, so how are they gonna make it when they get out of the cave? Like, it's not like they have food just appear. They don't have a food teleporter. I don't know, how does they, like, is there a grocery store? And then I feel like there's some scam here, because the guide, maybe they doesn't have to take out the food, so the guy that made a deal with the grocery store, so he forces them to throw away the food, so everyone has to buy on the grocery store, and that's why he gets a kickback, and that's why he like forces them. I'm rambling here, I know, but it's a little weird. The no bending, that the guide can't bend after breaking his arms, we see a lot of times, we see several times that especially earthbenders can bend with other parts of their body, especially their legs. So it feels a little cop out, and I feel like they didn't want to hurt him too much. Like, they didn't want to kill him, like break every bone in his body. That would have been too severe for a children's show, maybe. I just feel like he could still bend in some ways, and they could get out. Like, it's a little bit too much of a coincidence, if you know what I mean. And also with the food thing, has no one ever smuggled food into the canyon before? I feel like that would have been a common issue. Is everyone just a good person in this universe, and these two are the only scummy people ever? I feel like a lot of people would bring food into this, and the guide should have like been on watch at all times, because like he knows this happens, so he should be like little inspection so they don't bring food in, because the spider things are seemingly dangerous. So he's just like so chill with it. Like, has this never happened to you in these years of service? Like, how does that make sense? And the size of the canyon, it seems not too big, because one day for the guy to get through the canyon and then get back for the and he obviously gets some sleep, so it probably takes less than a day for him to walk. It takes more than a day in the show because he gets injured, but we don't know without the injury how quick would it be, and he needs, like I said, some sleep. So he goes over the canyon, then back, and then sleeps, and then do it all over again. So maybe like 8 hours to go through it. That would mean like Appa could fly this thing in seemingly maybe 20-30 minutes. So why not fly over a couple of times? Why not fly over with the food? That would have been easier. So Appa kind of makes this a little more difficult, because it doesn't seem too many people, but maybe there were too many people, so I don't know. But just all these stupid things really add up to drag down an episode. Not one single thing ruins it. Like, oh, if the no bending thing was the only problem, then wouldn't be too much a problem. But when everything is a little bit inconsistent, it makes you feel like the whole thing's inconsistent, and then you lose the suspension of belief that I talked about earlier, and then everything's kind of fucked. So that's why you really need to keep that consistency and that logic throughout, and not have these small things. And that's what really ruins this episode to be one of the worst, and in my opinion the worst episode of the entire show. So overall, it's unfunny. It doesn't have any good jokes really, though it's the funny part is kind of unintentional. How the guide falls asleep in just like 2 seconds while sitting next to Aang, like they're talking like about something dramatical, and then 2 seconds he's like dead asleep. That's so funny. And how Katara and Sokka get over their issues with the tribe and themselves in 2 seconds is also super serious into a more humor scene without really intending it to be. So most of the humor in this episode is definitely unintentional. The fights, we get really no good fight scene or action in this episode. The big like the bag over the crawlers to make them follow you, or maybe you can ride it, is so illogical, and it's not as cool as they think, honestly. Like I said, the stupid things, the consistency, the food, the bending, the size of the canyon, it just adds up and really drags this episode down. It's so on the nose in general. The conflict resolution just is up in your face the entire episode, and there's no nuance in anything. Yeah, it's probably the worst. Maybe not easily the worst. Imprisoned is being closed, and obviously the Painted Lady in season 3, but it's probably still the worst in my opinion. It feels like a totally another show that doesn't have the nuance or interest that Avatar does. The best thing to come out of this episode is the Ember Island joke in season 3, easily. Thank you for watching this far. If you liked this video, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing for one episode breakdown of Avatar each and every single week. Comment down below. Do you like this episode? Do you hate this episode? Probably like hate, we'll see. But yeah, until next time, have a great one.